She had everything money could buy. Imported cars, luxurious trips, designer clothes filling entire closets, and a routine made of endless parties and empty applause. To those who watched her, it was the perfect life. But to her father, a man who had built the family empire with sweat and discipline, it was nothing but a farce. He saw his daughter losing herself in a world of superficiality, without character, without purpose, without grasping the true value of life. And on a cold morning, this man decided he would no longer allow his own heiress to become a prisoner of her vanity. He called her into his office, and with a voice that sounded like a sentence, declared, "From this day on, it's over. I will no longer feed your illusion. Your money, your cards, your privileges, all of it is gone. You will work, you will start from the bottom, and you will learn what it means to earn something on your own." She tried to laugh, believing it was just another empty threat. But when she realized the decision was final, the ground crumbled beneath her feet. Within hours, the world of luxury vanished, and in its place came a new reality, working in one of her father's own companies, as just another employee. There, no one could know who she really was. She wouldn't have the title of heiress, only the weight of responsibility. The young woman, who had never washed a single glass, would now have to face the harshness of real life. And in that shock, in that sudden fall from a golden pedestal, her true story began. One where she would discover her greatest love and her true purpose in life. So before we move on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this story will stir something deep within you. Take a deep breath, get ready, because the full journey begins now.
Her first day at the company didn't feel real. From the luxury of a mansion with endless gardens, she now stood in front of a gray corporate building, cold and intimidating, where hundreds of employees rushed inside with briefcases in hand. There was no red carpet, no admiring looks, only hurried steps and the weight of people fighting for every cent. A chill ran down her spine as she passed through the security gate for the first time. The badge hanging from her neck bore no illustrious surname, only her first name, like any other worker. Inside those walls, no one could know she was the daughter of the owner. For everyone else, she was just another trainee, starting from scratch. The corridors stretched endlessly, lined with identical doors. When she stepped into the office assigned to her, she saw him. He stood tall, reviewing reports at a perfectly tidy desk. His presence was commanding, his gaze sharp, exuding natural authority. He was the man chosen to train her, a respected professional, known for his discipline and his ability to turn ordinary teams into powerful engines of success. She, accustomed to people flattering her at every turn, noticed immediately that he was not impressed. In fact, his expression was cool, almost skeptical. "So, you're the new hire," he said, not raising his voice, but in a tone that left no room for doubt. "I hope you're ready to work." She swallowed hard. Never in her life had anyone addressed her like that. Normally, just her name opened doors, brought smiles, dissolved obstacles. But here, it meant nothing. The first hours were a nightmare. Spreadsheets, reports, tasks she had never once done in her life. The keyboard felt like an enemy, the company's rules like a suffocating maze. More than once, she wanted to give up, to run back to the safety of the mansion. But the stern expression of her father haunted her mind, and the fear of disappointing him kept her seated. As she stumbled through every instruction, he watched in silence. Not with contempt, but with quiet curiosity. There was something about her that puzzled him. For all her inexperience, there was also a stubborn will, an almost hidden determination not to quit. During the break, she sat alone in the cafeteria, trying to hide her trembling hands as she sipped from a cup of coffee. Around her, other employees chatted about bills, children, hardships, and modest dreams. It was a universe so distant from hers that it felt like another planet. Here, no one talked about international trips or designer dresses. They talked about surviving. He walked over, pulled out a chair, and sat in front of her. The silence stretched for a moment. "You don't look used to this place," he said, not mockingly but firmly. She lowered her gaze. She couldn't reveal who she really was. Let's just say it's all new to me." He studied her for a few seconds, And for the first time, his lips curved into the faintest smile. Then you'll learn. But only if you're willing. His words echoed in her mind. You'll learn. It sounded like a challenge, but also an invitation. The following days were no easier. Mistakes in reports, confusion over deadlines, meetings where she felt completely lost. But something was changing. Each time she fell, she got up again. Each time she failed, she tried harder. And he, who had initially seen her as hopeless, began to notice a spark, determination, resilience, slowly breaking through. Her father, watching from a distance, didn't intervene. He remained silent, waiting. For him, this was only the beginning of her punishment. What he didn't realize was that he had planted the very first seed of her transformation. By the end of the first month, exhausted but still standing, she no longer recognized herself. High heels had given way to simple shoes, her glamorous dresses replaced by modest work clothes. But more than the outside, something inside her had shifted. For the first time, she felt pride, not for what she owned, but for what she was beginning to earn with her own effort. And just when she thought she was getting used to this new rhythm, the man who had been training her decided it was time to show her a side of his world that would change everything. Time passed quickly, though every day still felt like a challenge. Each new task tested her patience, each mistake threatened her confidence. Yet something unexpected was happening. The bond between her and the man who trained her was shifting. He no longer saw her as just a clumsy beginner, but as someone who, despite the stumbles, refused to quit. It was on a Friday evening that everything began to change. Most employees had already left the building, but she remained, hunched over her desk, reviewing a report for the fourth time, determined to get it right. He walked by, pausing to observe the unusual focus in her eyes. "It's getting late," he said, arms crossed. "You don't have to stay here alone." She looked up, tired but resolute. "I want to finish. I'm tired of failing." A small smile tugged at his lips, so subtle it was almost invisible. "That's new for you." Her brows knitted. "New for me? Most people, when they fail this much, just give up. You don't." The words pierced her deeper than she expected. For the first time, someone wasn't defining her by her last name, her status, or her wealth. He was defining her by her persistence. When they finally left, he offered her a ride. She hesitated but accepted. His car was simple, modest, nothing like the luxury vehicles she was used to. Yet there was something comfortable about its simplicity. On the way, he suddenly changed direction. "Where are we going?" she asked worried. His eyes stayed on the road. "I want to show you something." They pulled up to a large metal gate. Barking echoed from behind it. As the gate opened, her senses were overwhelmed. The smell of animals, the sound of yelps and whimpers, and the sight of dozens of dogs and cats, some scarred by neglect, others barely old enough to stand. "This is the shelter I help on weekends," he explained, stepping out of the car. They all came from the streets. Some were abandoned, others born without ever knowing a home. She froze, unsure how to react. Then, a small puppy limped toward her, tail wagging furiously as though her presence was a miracle. Instinctively, she bent down and scooped him up. His tiny body pressed against her chest, trembling yet full of hope. He watched her quietly. He had brought others here before, and most couldn't bear it. Too dirty, too sad, too heavy. But something about her reaction was different. "They don't care about money or names," he said softly, moving closer. "All they want is love." She looked into the puppy's eyes, and for the first time in years, her heart beat for something real. No performance, no applause, just compassion. That night, she couldn't sleep. The images of the shelter haunted her, but not with fear, with a strange, newfound purpose. Could she really help? Could she become more than the empty life she once lived? The very next day, she returned. No one expected her, but there she was, hair tied back, clothes plain, determination in her step. He was there too, carrying sacks of food. When he saw her, his brows lifted in surprise. "Came back." Her answer was simple but firm. "I want to help." From then on, her weekends were no longer filled with shopping trips or social events. Instead, she cleaned kennels, carried buckets, fed strays, and held trembling animals in her arms. At first clumsy, she soon found a rhythm. Other volunteers, once skeptical, began to respect her effort. But more important than their approval was the pride she felt herself. For the first time, she wasn't valued for what she had, but for what she gave. He too began to see her differently. Each time she knelt to comfort a frightened animal, each time she stayed long after others left, his admiration grew. The girl he had thought fragile and spoiled was revealing a strength he had not imagined. They spent more time together, first at the shelter, then outside it. Their conversations deepened. He shared stories of his own hardships, of losing a beloved dog as a child and promising himself to never turn his back on suffering animals again. She, in turn, confessed her insecurities, her struggles with identity, and her longing to find meaning beyond wealth. Something was inevitable. The friendship blossomed into something more. It wasn't spoken at first, but lingered in the way their eyes met, in the comfort of their silences. When their hands brushed while carrying supplies one evening, neither pulled away. Their first kiss came soon after, quiet and tender, under the gaze of the very animals that had brought them together. For her, it was as though life had been reborn. For him, it was the confirmation of a bond he could no longer ignore. But while their love was growing, far from their world of shelters and compassion, her father remained unaware. To him, she was still under the weight of punishment, still learning the value of responsibility. He had no idea that she was not only finding responsibility, but discovering love, and a cause that would soon define her future. The stage was set. The lessons had begun. And soon, her father's world would collide with hers in ways none of them could have imagined. The days passed, and what had started as an obligation now filled her with purpose. She no longer saw herself as the spoiled girl who had stumbled into the office that first day. At the shelter, the animals greeted her with wagging tails and eager eyes, as though they recognized the change in her. And beside him, every moment seemed to carry a new weight, a quiet significance. Their friendship had become inseparable. At work, there was still formality, he, the supervisor, and she, the trainee. But outside the walls of the company, they were confidants. He taught her how to manage reports and deadlines, but he also showed her how to face challenges without fear. She, without realizing it, brought light to his life, an energy that softened his once rigid demeanor. Others began to notice. Volunteers at the shelter exchanged knowing glances. It was in the way he watched her while she cleaned cages, the way she laughed at his dry remarks, the ease of their silences. Even the animals seemed to sense it. An old dog often lay between them, as if to bind their connection. But the deepest change was within her. For the first time in her life, she woke each morning with anticipation, not to flaunt wealth, but to live with meaning. The emptiness that once consumed her days was replaced with a new fire. Every rescued animal felt like a part of her own soul being saved. One evening, after a long shift at the shelter, they sat on a wooden bench, watching the dogs run in the yard. She broke the silence. I never thought I could be happy like this. Covered in dirt, exhausted, smelling like dog food, and yet I feel more alive than I ever did at a party. He turned to her, serious but with a gleam in his eyes. Because this is real. Nothing here is bought. It's life in its truest form. Her heart thudded. She hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you think I can really change? Or will I always be that shallow girl I used to be?" He took a deep breath before answering. "I think you already have. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because you've chosen to feel. And once you choose that, there's no going back." The words struck her with such force that she realized the truth she had been hiding even from herself. She was in love. It wasn't long before that love surfaced. One afternoon, as they carried boxes together, their hands brushed. This time, neither pulled away. They stood frozen, eyes locked, the air charged with unspoken words. The first kiss came soon after, soft and hesitant, but undeniable. It was the beginning of something neither of them could resist. Their world felt perfect, but perfection rarely lasts. Her father found out. Not from her lips, but from whispers. A director at the company mentioned, casually, that the new trainee seemed too close to one of the supervisors. Suspicious, the millionaire had her followed. And when the truth came out, his fury was boundless. He summoned her to his office. The air was heavy as the door shut behind her. "So it's true?" His voice thundered. "I gave you a chance to grow, to learn, and you repay me by entangling yourself with an employee?" She tried to explain, but he cut her off. "You don't know what you're doing. That man is not of your world. He has no name, no wealth, no future to offer you. You deserve more." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Father, it's not about status. It's not about money. It's about love. He showed me life, the life I never understood, the life you wanted me to learn." But he refused to listen. Determined to save her, he arranged a match with a suitable heir from another wealthy family. Dinner after dinner, she was forced to sit across from the polished young man her father had chosen. Yet she was no longer the obedient daughter she once had been. Each attempt to mold her only pushed her closer to the shelter, closer to the man she loved. One night he found her crying, torn by her father's demands. He held her hands, his own voice trembling. "I don't have your father's wealth," he admitted. "But what I do have, no fortune could ever buy, my heart. It's yours, completely." She squeezed his hands, her decision clear. "And that's all I need." The inevitable confrontation came at a formal family dinner. The chosen heir sat beside her, smiling politely, while her father looked on with expectation. But she stood, her voice firm and unwavering. "I will not marry him. I will not live a life that isn't mine. If I must, I will give up everything, the money, the inheritance, the empire. I'd rather live with little but in truth than live with everything in emptiness." The room fell silent. The young heir excused himself, embarrassed. Her father's fury erupted, but beneath it, something cracked. For the first time, he saw his daughter not as the spoiled child he had raised, but as a woman willing to sacrifice everything for love and purpose. That night, alone, he remembered his own youth, how he too had once had nothing but dreams and determination. Slowly, painfully, he realized that his daughter's path, though different, was perhaps more valuable than his own. The battle lines had been drawn. Her decision was final. And her father would have to choose, to continue controlling her life, or to finally trust her to live her own. The revelation at the dinner table shook everything. Her father, a man accustomed to having his word taken as law, had been defied openly. The mansion, once a stage for glamour and laughter, now carried the heavy silence of a battlefield. In the days that followed, he tried every argument to make her reconsider. He reminded her of the comfort, the security, the legacy she was throwing away. "You have no idea what you're about to lose," he insisted, his voice heavy with frustration. "A lifetime of achievement, gone because of a foolish decision." But her answer was always calm, almost disarmingly so. "Father, the only thing I'd lose is myself, if I went back to living the way I did." Each exchange left him unsettled. She was no longer the fragile girl who bowed to his authority. She spoke with conviction, her eyes steady, like someone who had found her place in the world. At the shelter, she buried herself in work. She cleaned kennels, organized donation drives, nursed sick animals back to health. For her, those moments weren't sacrifices, they were victories. And by his side, she felt stronger than ever. One evening, after hours of labor, they sat on the floor surrounded by puppies. He studied her, admiration softening his usually stern expression. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked quietly. "It won't be easy, giving up everything." She smiled, cradling a pup in her arms. "I've never been more certain. For the first time, I'm living a life that feels like mine. Not bought, not imposed." Her words filled him with pride and fear all at once. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew nothing could sway her now. When her father learned she was organizing donation campaigns at local markets, his disbelief deepened. The daughter who once wore diamonds now stood in parking lots asking strangers for dog food. Outrage burned inside him, but so did confusion. How could she abandon everything for this? One morning, unable to hold back his curiosity, he appeared at the shelter himself. He arrived overdressed in his impeccable suit, clearly out of place among the smell of hay and disinfectant. Volunteers glanced at him, whispering. He walked slowly through the corridors, eyes darting from one cage to the next. Then, a limping dog shuffled toward him and sat at his feet. The man froze. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he bent down and touched the animal's head. The dog leaned into his hand, as if it had always been waiting for him. Something inside the father cracked wide open. He looked up and saw his daughter across the room watching. In her eyes he saw pride, not for wealth, but for compassion. For the first time in years he realized she wasn't lost at all. She had found herself. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice unsteady. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought I knew what was best. But you've shown me something money can't buy." Tears blurred her vision as she rushed to him. They embraced, truly embraced, for the first time in years. That same week, he summoned the young man to his office. The supervisor entered, braced for confrontation, expecting rejection. Instead, the older man rose from behind his desk and extended his hand. "You've proven more than loyalty to this company," the father said firmly. "You've proven character. That's something rare. From today, I want you to take on a greater role. Not because of my daughter, but because you've earned it." The young man was stunned, his throat tight. "Thank you. I won't let you down." And with that, the walls that had divided them began to crumble. The heiress who had once lived for appearances had chosen love and purpose over wealth. Her father, who had once valued status above all, discovered humility in the presence of a broken dog. And the man who had been just a supervisor was now part of something greater, not only a family, but a future built on respect and trust. The story wasn't finished. A new chapter was beginning, one of healing, rebuilding, and dreams yet to be fulfilled. Time flowed like a steady river, but everything had changed. The life she once knew, made of luxury and empty pleasures, was gone. Now her days were filled with study, responsibility, and the discovery of a love that grew deeper with each passing moment. The decision to study veterinary medicine had come naturally, like an undeniable calling. After countless hours spent at the shelter, caring for wounded dogs, frightened cats, and fragile strays, she realized she wanted more than to volunteer. She wanted to heal, to dedicate her life to giving voice and hope to those who could not speak for themselves. Her father, once shocked, now encouraged her choice. The man who had spent decades believing that only wealth mattered now sat silently, often watching her bent over thick textbooks, scribbling notes late into the night. What moved him most was the light in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't chasing entertainment, she was pursuing meaning. And in that pursuit he saw his daughter truly alive. Meanwhile, her relationship blossomed. There were no more secrets, no more fears. Their love spoke in the smallest of gestures, the way she leaned into him when exhaustion threatened to weigh her down, the way his eyes softened when she entered the room, the silent support he offered every time she doubted herself. At the company, he excelled. Promoted by her father, he proved his worth not because of favoritism but because of discipline and vision. Yet despite his growing career, he never abandoned the shelter. Together, they continued to dedicate weekends to rescuing, cleaning, healing, and dreaming of a better future for every abandoned soul that crossed their path. Then came a moment none of them expected. On a sunny Saturday, her father appeared at the shelter. But this time, he wasn't dressed in his impeccable suit. Instead, he wore simple clothes, ready to help. The volunteers smiled in disbelief as the once intimidating millionaire picked up a shovel and worked side by side with them. By the end of the day, he did something even more remarkable. He chose a dog. The animal was a scruffy mutt, with uneven fur and a patient, gentle gaze. The man picked him up, stroked his back, and announced, "He's coming home with me." It's time I learned what unconditional love really means. The decision stunned everyone. But for his daughter, it was the clearest proof that change was possible, even in the hardest of hearts. Months passed, and life only grew brighter. The couple's bond grew stronger, and one afternoon at the shelter, surrounded by barking dogs, he knelt down nervously, holding a small box in his hands. "You've changed my life," he said, his voice trembling. "I want every day from now on to be with you, building not just a home, but a purpose. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her cheeks before she could even speak. "Yes." 1,000 times, yes. Applause broke out among the volunteers, while the dogs barked as if celebrating too. The wedding was unlike anything society expected of a millionaire's daughter. There were no chandeliers, no grand halls, no endless guest lists of the elite. Instead, it was held outdoors, in a garden filled with simple flowers and warm sunlight. Friends, colleagues, shelter volunteers, and even some adoptive families were present. The animals roamed freely, wagging tails and purring as though they too had been invited. Her father walked her down the aisle. For the first time, pride shone not in his name or wealth, but in the woman she had become. His eyes welled with tears as he placed her hand in the hand of the man who had won her heart not with riches, but with truth. The celebration was simple but perfect. Laughter, heartfelt speeches, and the gentle glow of love filled the air. The dog her father had adopted trotted happily through the guests, a living symbol of transformation. After the wedding, life found its rhythm. She dedicated herself to her studies, with dreams of expanding the shelter into a full veterinary clinic. He continued his career, now trusted and respected in the company, while always reserving time for the cause that had brought them together. Her father, once a figure of control, became a man who visited the shelter weekly, bringing not only financial support but his own hands and heart. With time, the shelter grew. More animals were saved, more families found companions, and the community came to see the place not just as a refuge for strays, but as a sanctuary of hope. And at home, the couple discovered that true wealth wasn't measured by the size of their bank account but by the small joys they shared. A morning coffee before work, a walk hand in hand, the silent comfort of being understood without words. Her father perhaps changed the most. He, who once lived by power and appearances, was often seen in the park, walking his adopted dog with a smile that years of fortune had never given him. To him, that animal wasn't just a companion. It was a reminder that love and loyalty can be found in the simplest of places. And so, their story reached its final chapter, not one written in gold or luxury, but one carved in truth, sacrifice, and rebirth. The spoiled heiress had become a woman with a mission. The stern father had become a man capable of love. And the supervisor had become a husband, a partner, and the cornerstone of a new family. Together, they discovered the greatest treasure of all, not money, not status, but the power of love, purpose, and the courage to choose a life of authenticity. Because in the end, what defines us is not what we own, but who we love, what we fight for, and the lives we touch along the way. In the end, the young woman who once drowned in luxury discovered that the greatest treasure was never hidden in jewels, mansions, or first-class trips. The true treasure was in the bonds she built, the love she embraced, and the purpose she chose for her life. What had begun as a punishment turned into the greatest gift her father could have given her, the chance to find herself. She, who once chased empty applause, learned to walk with humility, to serve with compassion, and to love with her whole heart. And the man who believed that only status and wealth mattered, even he was transformed. Watching his daughter's courage, he too softened. He, who once valued only power, found joy in the simple loyalty of a stray dog. For the first time, he understood that money cannot buy character, nor can it buy love. In the end, they all gained something greater than fortune. The daughter became a woman of purpose, the supervisor became not just a mentor but a partner for life, and the father became human again, finally capable of seeing the world through the eyes of compassion. Together, they built not just a family, but a legacy of love. And so, this is not just a story about romance. It is a story of redemption. Proof that character is worth more than inheritance, that love is worth more than appearances, and that even the hardest of hearts can be transformed by truth.
Now I want to know from you, which part of this story touched you the most? Which moment moved your heart? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every one of them. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave your like. That way, you won't miss any of the powerful, emotional stories we share here. Because in the end, every story is not just a tale, it is a mirror. And maybe by listening to this one, you too will realize that the true value of life is not what we have, but who we are and the love we choose to give.